Hi everyone, thanks for joining today's Hangout session. Today we will be talking about analytics and how we're learning that the customer is now rarely, if ever, right. I'm Andrew McNair, Head of Benchmarking for Dimension Data, and we're joined today by Rob Allman, Principal Director for Customer Experience, Neville Cousins, Solutions Director, and Paul Scott, our Senior Consulting Director. Both during and after the session, we'd welcome any questions you may have, and you can ping them through to us by using the hashtag #DDHangout. Today's Hangout is based upon a blog from Paul around the digital prophecy, and we'll also be touching upon some associated findings from the 2015 Global Contact Center Benchmarking Report on the digital transformation of customer service and key drivers that will further reshape the industry over the coming 5 years. So. Anyway, let's get right into it. Paul, what is this digital prophecy you talk about, and can you provide some context and explain your thinking behind the blog, please?
Certainly. Well, and good day, everyone. Thanks, Andrew. Yes, so I was moved to write this blog called "Exploring the Digital Prophecy" because of one of the key findings that came out of the Global Benchmarking Report this year. Which we headlined as being "Go Digital or Die." So that was the prophecy. I'd hasten to add, as far as I know, nobody's actually died from not going digital, but it was a powerful metaphor, or powerful headline to describe really one of the biggest shifts taking place in our industry in the last 30 years, which is this move to that customers are making to use digital channels as channels of choice for interacting with organizations, rather than necessarily using call centers or voice contact. And this has profound implications for the contact center industry and any organization that offers customer service, because this shift means that we now need to start adopting some of the principles and processes and tools that are used in the digital domain on a day-by-day basis in order to improve customer experience and customer journeys through digital contact. So let me just give you an example. There's an organization that we've been doing some work with recently, who are a global travel business. They've got an online presence only, and we met with their CTO, who is a passionate believer in delivering great customer experiences. But he says there are three things that he has, three mantras that he uses to inform how his business is engaging with customers. He says, number one is customers are rarely, if ever, right. And he said, I'm not just saying that to be controversial. He said, I'm saying it because it's the truth. And I know it's the truth because I've got the data. And the thing that he is alluding to is the fact that all of us who go on the internet to book a hotel or to research prices for a flight leave a trail of breadcrumbs behind us. You know, we click on pages, we view information, we move our mouse around the screen, and his organization captures every single mouse movement, click, page view, anything we put into a shopping basket, and he analyzes that data. He's got a team of 500 people who are just doing data analytics.
Wow.
These are people who are fastidiously looking at how customers move across their website, where they go to afterwards, when they come back, what they do when they come back, etc., etc. So he's building up profiles on individual customers and on behavior, and he's using that information in all sorts of ways. The second thing that he believes is that every time a customer calls his call center, and by the way, although this is an online business, he's got a call center, he said every time a customer calls our call center, we have an opportunity to upsell. And he's got data that proves that every single time a customer calls them, they are able to, if they can resolve the problem, they can usually achieve an upsell, to the extent that customers that call their call center spend 12% more with them per annum than customers that don't. So these are in the main complaining customers, which is a phenomenal performance if you think about it. So as far as he's concerned, the call center pays for itself to the extent that they're actually doubling the size of their call center over the next 18 months. They're actually talking about having 10,000 people answering telephone calls from customers around the world, because they know that if they can capture customers when they most need help and give them a great customer experience, they're much more likely to stay with them and spend more money. The third thing that he told us was, every time a customer calls us, in the same way that we have information that we collect on them every time they're clicking on pages, every time they call us is another opportunity for us to improve the processes and our web experience. So we must capture and analyze that information again in detail to the same degree of rigor that they apply to the digital breadcrumbs that we leave behind. So the stuff that they're told, every conversation, of course, that comes into their call center is recorded, and that is then analyzed to determine what customers are doing and why, and how they can use that to improve their overall customer experience. So these three things are very, very interesting for me, because this mindset is not a mindset that is typical in the voice contact center domain. Those of us who work in the contact center industry for any period of time will know that, you know, when we talk about analytics, it's usually to do with things like quality monitoring and performance management, and understanding what the interaction, the quality of the interaction has been like with a customer. And that's pretty much as far as it goes. We need to start adopting the same kind of rigor with interactions that our digital colleagues do as a norm. And I think that really was a bit of a cathartic moment for me, because it just made me realize how far away a lot of organizations are in terms of understanding the potential that they have for delivering a great customer experience if they start adopting the same degree of rigor around analysis of data as people on the web are doing. So just going back to our travel company example, one of the interesting organizational benefits from this is they change their website something like twice every month. There's an updated version of the website that goes up. And the reason for that is because of this obsession with data analysis. Once a week, they do a dump of what are the key changes that we need to be thinking about making to our website in order to improve the customer experience. And they literally have an updated version of their core product up on the web a couple of times a month. Now, you sort of look at how, for example, in the voice domain, vendors who offer contact center solutions might give you an upgraded version once or twice a year. You know, these guys are kind of doing it on the fly. And interestingly, he said to me, you know what? If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, because we're going to be putting up another version in a couple of weeks' time. So they kind of take a different approach to the whole life cycle of software and the whole issue around UAT and how things actually get approved before they change. And this change in thinking is going to have a profound impact on the way that we think about processes in contact centers as well. Because if you adopt, again, that principle around don't worry about it being perfect, what we've got to do is to make sure the customer experience is as good as it can be given the information we've got. So let's make those changes. If it doesn't work this week, we can change it again next week. So this is really gets under the bonnet, if you like, of what I think this go digital or die prophecy is really all about.
Excellent. It certainly sounds, Paul, as though what you're describing, that the modern contact center is not what it was once perceived. And in essence, I think what you just described there to me is that the modern centre is managing data, customer data, with the same granularity that traditional contact centres managed people.
Indeed, yes, and I think perhaps Rob or Neville, you might want to jump in here, because I think that some of the advances that are taking place on the technology side are going to help contact centres enormously in being able to offer a better customer experience based on the data that they've got and the tools that are now available for doing that analytics piece. So,
yeah, so if I can comment on that, I do think that that the technology is there. I think there's never been a lack of technology in the contact center. But I think something that you mentioned, Paul, that sort of resonates with me is that the type of change that's happening. When you look at a digital online company, that's all they have. They're online, they're digital, their technology is geared for that, their mindsets are geared for that, and their business model is geared for that. I think as you look at traditional contact centers, the challenge I see is most organizations, if you look at our benchmark report findings, most organizations know that they've got to go digital, but most IT directors and CIOs are telling us that, my technology is not geared for that. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get there. So there's a bit of a discrepancy there. But the fact that technology is available, firstly, the ability to analyze the content of the call is certainly technology that is evolved and now provides a lot of information based on what customers are saying during the calls, and that's all automated and gives a very clear insight of areas of concern, risk, where callers start talking about competitors, etc. That helps them, that would help contact centers identify and understand, what customers are saying. At a different level, when you start looking at the data associated with interactions, I think that's where the huge opportunity lies as well, where the ability to access data and information across the organization, relate that to customers and customers' experience, and then, as you've said, Paul, I think the ability to very quickly adapt based on that information in how you service, in the information that you're providing, in the products that you're giving clients, I think that's a huge opportunity.
Indeed. Rob?
Yeah, and one of the comments I'd make is I agree. If we look at the Go Digital Die piece, I think there's some people who have an inherently unfair advantage if they were born digitally, and I think there's a couple of pieces that really kind of strike through here, and we call it, if we look at it as a digital dilemma. Where if organizations have been built out and they have traditional structures, they have significant investments, they have at scale, whether it's physical, digital, or contact center assets, what we're seeing now is that they've got a challenge of how do they renovate the core to integrate all this information whilst at the same time showing the innovation, the fresh thinking, to match and outperform some of the emergent competitors they have. And that's just from kind of the structural and the channel perspective. When we then look at that in terms of how they get the different functions that have may have grown up and have their own particular silos, and whether it's sales, marketing, services, distribution, etc. How do they kind of bring those pieces and those processes that are attractive, vibrant, and create great design customer journeys and experiences together? For me, it's when we look at it, we say, well, yeah, there's that seamless channel experience. There's the product offering and that comes together in an integrated manner, and that creates the moment of truth. And really, it's that ability to handle both of those challenges that organizations who weren't born digitally have to culturally overcome And it's interesting that we see there isn't a particular vertical or geography. Typically, there's a leader who emerges who kind of creates a burning platform and raises a flag for people to rally to that creates this momentum. And so I think absolutely, if we look at data, you know, we mentioned this phrase in this year's benchmarking report. If data is going to be king, you know, and the sovereign, and it's the sovereign currency, then really that use of the data in a world of hyper competition will absolutely be the kind of currency that differentiates and determines the success and the value of that success. So, you know, analytics will be instrumental because it determines you know, the best offer, the best people, the best resources, the most appropriate media, the next best actions. So, but it has to have all those supporting entities coming into it.
Yeah. Actually, you raised a couple of other interesting points there, Rob. I wanted to also cover off, and one of them is this sort of organizational intent versus what they're actually able to do. So we know that, you know, if you look at the speakers on any conference on customer contact centers or customer experience, the list is they're all customer experience officers now. Everybody's got customer experience in their job title in this domain. But the interesting thing is that their ability to execute and their ability to actually deliver a consistent and coherent joined up customer experience within their organizations is hugely constrained. And there are literally only a handful of what I've described as traditional businesses, either ones who've not been born digital, who've actually achieved any of this. Because they may have somebody who's got the job title customer experience officer or head of customer experience, but has he really got accountability and responsibility for that? Or is he really like an in-house consultant trying to fix, you know, sort of fill in some of the cracks to make sure that it's a better and more joined up customer experience than it is currently? What's your view on that?
Well, Paul, to me it's clear there's I think both yourself and Rob have touched upon the focus and the mindsets depending on sort of where you entered the kind of the customer experience solution set. I think looking at this has come through very clearly over the last 2 or 3 benchmarking reports, is that traditional contact centers are performing supremely well. They've got 20, 25 years worth of experience around handling voice. If it moves, they know about it, they know exactly where to look, they know exactly how to manage it, they know how to optimize it, and I think absolutely there will always be some best practices and some that are not performing so well, but over the piece and across almost our entire sample, that element of the customer experience world is being managed supremely well. But that's where I'm saying it's a mindset, because I think that what is also coming through very clearly is that whilst a lot of organizations are now providing digital channels, they don't know how to manage them. The skills are not necessarily there. The mindset in terms of the data analytics that you've been touching upon around understanding what those analytics mean, and to me it's almost as though this whole focus around call quality and all of those traditional measures, absolutely, that needs to continue as is. But the real focus area sounds as though, from what yourself, Rob, and Neville are suggesting, that there needs to be a change in strategic direction to start looking at the analytics and how you can then best maximize some of these new channels, and at the same time, if appropriate, personalize the journeys so that you can increase the value of that interaction, not just to the customer, which is obviously crucial, but also to the organization. We want to ensure that we're routing traffic through the best and most efficient channels that keep everyone happy, but that also maximize results. And I think, to me, there's those two camps. But what if someone can step in? what are your views on the building blocks to starting to create that pathway and bring the operational excellence, which is there on voice, and the analysis and the information overload at times which is out there? How do you bring that together, and how do you know what to look for your business?
So, if I could just comment on that, I think one of the things that we're seeing, or the trends that we're seeing, is that technology that's being used nowadays is not always being provided by the IT department. So, businesses out there are starting to make IT decisions by accessing very convenient, easy to use technology that's based in the cloud. But then to your point, Andrew, what happens is, as they start using this, it's great because the business is now in control, and they can respond to their requirements, and they can respond directly to client requirements. But then as it gets bigger, it becomes cumbersome, and it becomes and now it's got to integrate back into the customer database, and it's got to integrate back into the ERP system and all sorts of stuff. And now IT gets involved, and now it becomes one of those things that, oh, crikey, now we've got to manage this and we've got to pull it in. So while there are solutions that the business would want to take, to take action, IT has to be, come to the party, so to speak. So I think that there's this need for IT to bridge the gap between where organizations want to be and what makes sense from a cost perspective, from an operational risk manageability perspective. But I often wonder, how aggressive are organizations, or how do they realize how aggressive they really need to be in order to be competitive going forward? I think some of the online radical companies get it. They realize it, but the traditional companies have almost got they're so ingrained in what they've done in the last 10 years. They know they need to change, but it's quite difficult. I must say it is a bit of a challenge. So
yeah, and I agree. And Andrew, I'd almost question. So is there genuine excellence? Because if we look at the traditional metrics that contact centers, as an example, have marched against, whether it's abandon rates, waiting, handle times, etc. I think that if we look at it, they've almost been trapped in the wrong body. Have those really been delivering excellent experiences, etc.? And they've been very much, hygienal measures that charts forms of efficiency that are valid, but they only kind of covered 10-15% of the absolute critical success factors that are important in the world that we live in. And it begs the question: what are the critical success factors, and is the information we're gathering, how we report on it, how we're using it? I think a number of the traditional measures, if used incorrectly, it will continue to be the kind of core measures that form up, the dashboard of success, etc. Do organizations want to be a product of their environment, which I think they will do if they keep following down that path? Or if we look at how we use analytics effectively in terms of what our objectives are, we can understand in real time how we can influence and change behaviors, outcomes. Will our environment become a product of our actions? And I think that's at the central point in terms of what the core mind shift and culture that we have to look at within this. And so I would dispute that there's been operational excellence. I think there's been an increased training and performance level against some metrics. I agree. But when we look at the core stats of things, customer is king, net promoter score, customer effort score have re-established the strategic positioning of the customer, which has been so important. However, the measures that we've had traditionally don't support that, and complaints are going up, SAT levels are dropping 4 years running. And so we need to have that balanced scorecard of what the success factors are. We need to have the right capability and skills and the organizational dynamic and capability to make sure we're impacting things that genuinely succeed and are powered to change things. You know, Paul mentioned that website shifting every 2 weeks. I think we're being generous. People do upgrades once, 2 times a year to the website, to the contact center. How many people are really aware of the spaghetti that things like IVRs have turned into? You know, so I think that's the central piece in terms of there's a departure in terms of the critical success factor and what we're measuring and the structure we have to execute against that.
Yeah, and Rob, I agree with you in terms of the measurements being incorrect. I think my point was more around the contact centres having a perception of what they should manage, so therefore they are managing their perceived critical success factors very well, but I think it's misguided, and absolutely entirely agree with you there. Another point, just building upon something I think Paul mentioned a moment or so ago around this gap and also the technologies being out there. Living in North America, one of the things that I really see a lot these days is there's some phenomenal customer experience, customer service solutions out there, mind-blowing stuff where organizations are using some of the technologies to a level that you're just, it's just phenomenal, and it really leaves you with a wow factor on, that really surpassed my expectations. I was in control, I had choice, and I was treated so well. There seems to be a growing gap between some of those organizations who are making that leap and seem to get it versus the others who perhaps are a little bit of ostriches with their heads stuck in the sand. Any views on how that gap can be closed and what those with us today can do to start making a difference within their organization?
Yeah, I just think that going back to an earlier point I made, one of the issues here is the organizations themselves. The structure of these businesses, that particularly any business that's been around for more than 20 or 30 years has got a legacy and an infrastructure and a way of working and a culture which does not necessarily encourage cross-functional working, will not necessarily encourage the connection, the easy and seamless connection of customer touch points. So you might have, you know, your web presence might be owned by the marketing directorate. Your customer services operation reports into the chief operating officer. Your social media might be managed by your PR department. I mean, the kind of barriers that exist, the functional silos that exist within organizations do not encourage a fully joined up, seamless customer experience. So, you know, if you've got that structure in place and then you layer on top of it, we've got to see a customer experience officer who's got overall governance of the end-to-end piece and is here to provide us with a seamless customer experience. It's really hard for that individual to mobilize the necessary resources and to apply the necessary technology if they don't have some financial accountability and responsibility as well, because they're always going to be having to deal with the company political issues and the functional issues, and you know, you're not in our budget and it's not in their budget, and you know, it's a really tough issue to deal with, but I do think it's an absolutely critical one to overcome. The second point I wanted to make was the people piece. We haven't talked about people. This, you know, the organizations who've got customer experience right are ones that seem to have a culture and a mindset which just does customer experience almost by default. They've got it in their DNA, and they behave in a way which is consistently good every time you come in contact with them. So, you know, the culture of the organization and how empowered people are at the front line to actually deliver a great customer experience is a critical success factor. So it doesn't matter how good your processes are, doesn't matter how good your technology is, doesn't matter how good your design is in terms of the customer experience. If you don't have the culture embedded in people, whether they're actually talking to customers or not, so this applies to people in the analytics function as much as it does in frontline customer service, you're never going to get there. I think that's absolutely critical. The third point I wanted to make is an observation, which companies who are doing this well are doing it incrementally. It's not a transformation. It's a long-term project, and it takes time to actually embed all of the changes necessary from a people, process, and technology point of view to make it work. Unless you've got a blank sheet of paper, because you're always going to have to deal with the legacy. We've got to fix the core, and we've got to implement new as well.
Yeah.
And it's doing those two things at the same time.
Yeah, and I'd add to that. I absolutely agree, Paul. I think the thing I would add, I want to make sure that we don't leave a beat up on organisations that aren't kind of in the new economy or the sharing economy, because when I look at it, there's some of those who are very successful, and when the digital world fails or there's issues, their service can drop off the face of the earth. Even some of the most well-known brands are incredibly difficult to access if something goes wrong. And when we go back to the core of how people bridge the gap, etc., etc., it is always simple, and it always comes back to this: design from the customer backwards and design end to end. And it's about that designed customer journey, those use cases, those scenarios, and that simplifies things. And if silos are broken, so the technology is there to manage and create that seamless experience, if there's the will at the right executive level for different areas to come, and digital business requires no boundaries, but that design of the customer journey and looking for those outcomes is critical, and that has to be the guiding star. And then things become simpler, because people are marching to a mission that makes sense. And the customer will be king, because that's what people's stated objective is, and the outcomes follow. So I think that traverses new world organisations who are well established, and that for me is the most critical path to achieving successful change.
Great. Well, I think we're pretty much out of time.
I think.
You want to wrap up?
Yeah, sure. Just building upon your point there, Rob. I think that's covered in some depth within our global benchmarking report. For anyone on the Hangout today who's not come across the benchmarking report, you can find out more information by clicking on www.dimensiondata.com/cc benchmarking. Within our website, you can access some of the items we've touched upon today, a summary of the report, some infographics, a video overview, and also some regional highlights around some of the key findings as well. So just to wrap up, conscious of time, it'd be good to get one takeaway from our expert panel today in regards to today's subject matter. Paul, can we maybe kick off with your good self? If there was one takeaway for our listeners, what would that be in regards to analytics and the digital prophecy?
Well, I think it is to treat it holistically. I think this is an organisational change project, but it's a long-term one. And I think in order for organisations to really leverage the potential of digital customer experiences, we've got a lot to learn from the digital domain. As Rob says, it's not a case of them always getting it right, but certainly, the route here, I think, to understanding how is really getting our heads around data analytics and understanding the potential of how that can be applied in businesses to deliver great customer experience.
Excellent, fantastic. Neville?
Yes, I think we've focused on a lot of negativity, but just to look at it from a positive side is that I really believe that firstly, digital is going to transform contact centers quite significantly, and there's a huge opportunity for us to take contact centers to the next level by leveraging digital. So that's a huge opportunity. And the second thing is data and information correctly applied can add huge and significant benefits to every area of the business. And it's there for the taking. It just needs to be analyzed and looked into. So just go and get it. That's what I say.
Great stuff. Great point. And Rob?
Oh, well, I agree with Neville. It's everything that we wanted and looked at if you think about direct business over the years. The opportunity is there, the sales opportunity, the growth, the advocacy that it can create. And it's such a massive win-win in terms of the automation of business activity. And for me, this is a non-negotiable. The use of this data and setting your stall out and understanding the key things that are really going to change, making significant and serious investment in this space it is absolutely mission critical to organization success. It isn't a trend. It's not something you can look at every 4 or 6 months. It's a real thing that the art and skill and perspiration and science in making this work as a differentiator is critical, and it has all the information to drive change in the business and achieve change for your customers. So it's an exciting place, and the information is there. It's how we turn it into actionable data that creates outcomes.
Excellent. Thanks, Rob. So, go digital or die. Just a final tidbit from me. One of the key findings from the most recent, the 2015 benchmark report, which was published end of February this year, was the top ranked item that's been voted by over 900 contact centres within our sample as voted as being most to reshape the contact centre industry during the next 5 years is indeed customer analytics. So absolutely, organisations are getting it, and they're taking some steps towards that. Again, thanks everyone for joining today's session. If that website address again, if you need any more information or if you want to reach out and ask any more questions, www.dimensiondata.com/cc benchmarking, and you can also ping through some questions even after this Hangout is ended by using the hashtag DD benchmarking. Thanks again to everyone for your time, and see you again soon.
Thanks, Andrew.